I'll just give you a minute. Did you notice what changed there? That's a completely different slide in the PowerPoint. Thank you. There's no question mark. So let me start right there. Thought it was spelled differently? No, there's no question mark. Let me start there. You are blessed. You are blessed. Even Linda, you are blessed. There's no even. We do that. We do. So let me tell you, you are blessed. Don't let anyone tell you you are not. Do not let anyone say to you, even you. Do not let anyone say to you, for some reason you're not. Because you are. You are blessed by God. You, period, are, period, blessed, period. It would be great if you just believed me, but don't. Believe Jesus. Because that's how this piece, this Sermon on the Mount thing starts. It's the longest teaching of Jesus in the Bible. It's full of really important things. And it goes on quite some time, much like a Sunday morning sermon. In fact, we call it the Sermon on the Mount because it is so profound. And what does it start with? It starts with words of blessing. This is one of those moments, too, by the way, where depending on which translation of the Bible you're using, it tells you what blessing means. So you might hear, blessed are they. That's why we call it the Beatitudes, right? They're all phrases that begin, blessed are they. Or you might hear, happy are those. Because to be blessed is that kind of, happy's not even a good enough word for it. The reason some translations say happy is that the original Greek word is normally translated to mean that. But it's a different kind of happiness than just that everyday, I'm happy about this thing. It's an inner happiness. It's an inner sense of wonder and blessing and joy and all of that stuff rolled into that awareness of being of God, which is why you are blessed. So a couple of thousand years ago, Jesus wants to talk to the people. He sees a crowd. Jesus loves a crowd. So he goes up, Matthew says, a mountain. It might have been just a little hill. It might have been a mountain, but it was a vantage point from which to speak, ideally. One of the reasons Matthew probably says mountain is because mountain had significance in the Bible, right? Right now you might be picturing him somewhere in the Rockies looking down on people in the valley below. How'd they hear that? Well, okay, maybe he wasn't up the mountain, but the significance of the mountain is who lives on the mountain? God lives on the mountain. Sinai, Moses, connections to the idea that God lives on the mountain. And so here's the authority of God speaking. Not to mention the fact you could now hear him because he was standing up here. He didn't have a mic, in case you're wondering. Now, Matthew says he started speaking to the disciples, but it's Jesus and it's a crowd. I hardly think he left the crowd sitting there so that he could talk to 12. So I think he was speaking to the disciples, broadly meaning the followers, the people. And what does he begin with? He begins with words of blessing. Very specific words of blessing. And this will be the moment, by the way, that you would normally hear someone explain to you that the reason for that is 2,000 years ago, the people that Jesus was talking to, they were oppressed. It was an occupied country. People were very poor. There were a lot of problems. And on top of all of that, 2,000 years ago, people believed that if good things happened to you, it's because you were being shown God's favor. God was blessing you with these things because somehow you were worthy of that. But if good things weren't happening to you, if you were poor, if you were of low social standing, if you had some sort of sickness or illness happen to you, if you were handicapped in any way, if your life had negatively impacted in any way, it's because you were a sinner and God was punishing you. Thank goodness we don't believe that stuff anymore. You see where I'm going with that? We do believe that stuff still. There are actually places where that is actively preached, not here. But we still think that. If something good happens to you, we even say that. I am blessed with handsomeness. See, sometimes it's even delusional. But we still do it. If good things happen to us, we say we're blessed. If bad things happen to us, we say something different. But sometimes we also question, especially when we're grieving, why would God do that to us? We're still doing it. We're still doing it. You are blessed. Don't let anyone tell you any different. You are blessed by God. Now, it would have been easy for Jesus to start with that, right? To just say, you are all blessed by God, rather than itemize people. But see, here's the thing. It's easy to say that. It's easy to say 2,000 years ago, they thought this, and now we don't. But yes, we do. But those are both ways of making sure that we can hold the Bible out here and keep Jesus out here, so we don't have to really worry about whether or not we're meeting that anywhere. We can keep Jesus at a distance. There's less pressure that way, we don't have to live up to anything. But what Jesus does, and this is why I think he's speaking to the crowd, is what Jesus does is he looks around at the crowd and he sees the people and he sees what they're like. He might have even had some conversation with them as he made his way through the crowd. He certainly would have had conversation with the disciples that were with him, and he would have known them. So he spoke to them. He spoke to the poor and the grieving, the meek, the hurting. He spoke in an era, and again, don't tell me that this isn't today too, in an era where making peace meant using force. He spoke to those who didn't do that, who made peace by peaceful means. See, it's really easy to say Jesus was and Jesus said, but Jesus is and Jesus says. So when I read the Beatitudes, I think to myself, how would I speak to you to tell you that you're blessed? How would I see that in me? And maybe that's a question to ask yourself, is to read through the Beatitudes, to think about how we are blessed by God simply because we are of God, created in God's image. We are connected to each other by that power of love, which is God. So in the moments when you're happiest, great, that's easy to see. In the moments when you're not, it's harder to see. In the moments when people are hurting you, persecuting you even, it's hard not to hear them, because words do matter. How do you remind yourself that you are blessed? How do you see blessing in those moments? You are of God. We are blessed. So blessed are the poor and the meek and the hurting. But so are the unemployed. Blessed are the people who lost their job and feel a little bit like they're failing because, well, actually, Graham, can I see the next slide? I had to write all of these down because I had to think about it. I will apologize, though, that it might appear to be kind of small and hard to read. Blessed are those who struggle with feeling good enough when they don't look like the latest it person. When you don't look fashionable, blessed are you. Because who says you're not? Blessed are those who do their best and feel like it's still not good enough. Whose standard are you trying to meet? Blessed are those who feel like a failure because they lost their job and are struggling to find one. Blessed are those who work 2 or 3 jobs and have trouble making ends meet. Blessed are those who feel ignored and unheard, like no one is paying any attention to them. Oh, there are so many on all the sides of the fence. Blessed are those who struggle with mental health. Blessed are those who feel abandoned and lost in a complicated world. Blessed are the vulnerable, the gentle, the kind, all those whom society labels as weak, because you are stronger than you know. Being vulnerable isn't weak. And in fact, it requires an inner strength greater than anything else. But that's why Jesus speaks to each of these people individually. He doesn't just say, you are blessed. He tells them where they're at, that they are blessed. So, 2 things I'd like to say about that. One is, if you are somebody who tends to meet things like, when people say things like Black Lives Matter with all lives matter, that's true. But here's a moment where somebody felt it necessary to say why their lives matter. So maybe instead of telling them that everybody matters, we should look into why they felt like they didn't. Maybe we should wonder how we can change that. Because they are blessed just as we are. How can we bring our blessing to that? When we talk about reconciliation in any context, see, I just did it there. I distanced myself from the thing. When we talk about reconciliation with First Nations people, it's really easy to say, I wasn't there. Or it was before my time. Instead of asking them, tell me how you feel. Share with me what you feel, so I'll understand. You are blessed. Share that with me. When we wonder about people in society that we are quite happy to have nothing to do with, maybe our question should be, why do you feel that way? Why is that happening? Because you are blessed, just like me. So there's part 2. Part 2 is sharing your blessing. Knowing that everyone is blessed. Ask those who don't feel it why they feel that way. Bring your blessing to them. See, Jesus' list is quite short relative to the people he was talking to. There were many, many, many more issues than that. My list is ridiculously short for the era in which we live. In a minute, I'm going to share somebody else with you who has a little bit of a different list, too. The point is, it's not enough to say we are all blessed. We need to be sure that we are asking others why they don't feel blessed and reminding them that they are, and sharing with them the blessing which is us, so that they too can share the blessing which is them. That's how we're connected by God. That's the truest blessing of all. So here's a short video clip from Nadia Bolz-Weber, who's a Lutheran pastor, most famous, I guess, for, not to mention several books, but also founding the church called the House of Saints and Sinners and Saints. I never get them in the right order. I'm sure one comes before the other, but still. And she has a slightly different list, but the most important thing is what she says at the very end. So here's Nadia Bolz-Weber.
Blessed are the agnostics. Blessed are they who doubt, those who aren't sure, those who can still be surprised. Blessed are those who have nothing to offer. Blessed are they for whom death is not an abstraction. Blessed are they who've buried their loved ones, for whom tears could fill an ocean. Blessed are they who've loved enough to know what loss feels like. Blessed are they who don't have the luxury of taking things for granted anymore. Blessed are they who can't fall apart because they have to keep it together for everyone else. Blessed are those who still aren't over it yet. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who no one else notices, the kids who sit alone at middle school lunch tables, the laundry guys at the hospital, the sex workers and the night shift street sweepers. Blessed are the forgotten. Blessed are the closeted. Blessed are the unemployed, the unimpressive, the underrepresented. Blessed are the wrongly accused, the ones who never catch a break, the ones for whom life is hard, for Jesus chose to surround himself with people like them. Blessed are those without documentation. Blessed are the ones without lobbyists. Blessed are those who make terrible business decisions for the sake of people. Blessed are the burned out social workers and the overworked teachers and the pro bono case takers. Blessed are the kind-hearted NFL players and the fundraising trophy wives. And blessed are the kids who step between the bullies and the weak. Blessed is everyone who has ever forgiven me when I didn't deserve it. Blessed are the merciful, for they totally get it. You are of heaven, and Jesus blesses you.